So let me ask you a question. What happens if you spend more than you make? More than likely, there's going to come a point where you can no longer continue to live that type of lifestyle. So why would anybody think it'd be any different when it comes to our national government, even though they happen to have a printing press? But at the end of the day, a default is inevitable just because this debt roller coaster ride we're on cannot continue forever. So today I have an article, the federal government should default on its debt. We're going to talk about it right now.
Always cash crisis. We're talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks.
They removed the one factor called monetary awareness.
We've never failed to pay all of our bills when and as due, and I think that can never happen. That's not something we can allow to happen. I think our credit rating and our credit as a country is such an important asset. I think U.S. debt is fairly high at a level of GDP, and much more importantly than that, it's growing faster than GDP, fairly significantly faster. We're going to have to either spend less or raise more revenue.
So there we have Jerome Powell doing some speeches most recently where he talked about they've never had an issue paying their bills. Why? As Alan Greenspan commented on years ago, because they have a printing press. They can always pay their bills, but they can't guarantee what it purchases. And then another thing is the credit rating of our country here could be in jeopardy if we don't get our bills paid. And what's most alarming is he said that debt is growing substantially faster than our GDP, or basically our income. And then his solution was either we have to cut our spending or figure out new ways to raise revenue. I'm not quite sure how I can do that when this economic expansion is coming to a halt pretty soon. So today I just got one article from Fox Business, and it said the federal government should default on its debts. When I saw this title, the first thing that came to mind is there's no other option but to default on their debt, because how can you pay off 22 trillion plus all the other things that's not on the balance sheet of our government, nevertheless be able to sustain the current interest costs, of which if you guys have a chance, I encourage you to watch this video here where the commentator mentions that if interest rates were to be raised 1 whole point, it would increase the interest on the national debt by roughly $190 billion. So that's definitely something we would have issues paying back. So as always, I'm going to thumb through this article here. More importantly, take time, read it for yourself. Scroll down below to get more details. So last month, the national debt surpassed 22 trillion, or nearly 180,000 per taxpayer. It says the figure will roughly double within 3 decades, since spending on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid will balloon as America's population ages. And so just to stop right there. So these categories here, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, are a given. They're a fact. And during this video here, the commentator also mentioned that at the current rate we're at now, we'll take on an additional $12 trillion. That's not even counting the possibility of a recession or response to a recession that we know will bring about more debt proposed as of now. It says such stratospheric debt will be completely untenable. It'll be like saddling every taxpayer with an additional mortgage on top of his or her existing house, credit card, and student loans. Said the lion's share of tax revenue will go toward interest on the debt. So any type of revenue that would be received was solely going to probably just paying a portion of the interest, not even the entire interest itself. It says leaving little for safety net programs, the military or core government functions. It says by 2050, federal government will spend more on interest payments than Social Security, health care, or national defense. So here we have by 2050, and in my opinion, and I'd be curious to find out what you think as well, but it's good to say this whole debt charade won't last another 31 years, in my opinion. It says if our elected leaders have been responsible, they would have reformed entitlement programs long ago and eliminated pointless tax breaks to balance the budget. Scroll down some more. It says our leaders have dug us into a hole, and the best way out is a soft default on the national debt. So making that statement there lets me know that the idea of a default is inevitable. So here the author is going to get into how we can possibly have a soft default. It says a hard default where the government simply refuses to pay its debts will cause a global economic meltdown. Dollar-denominated treasuries and Federal Reserve notes are the lifeblood of the global financial system. Dollar-denominated treasuries and Federal Reserve notes, aka the dollar, are the lifeblood of the global financial system. But a soft default, a one-time devaluation of dollars, which enables the government to pay back its debts in full, albeit at a low intrinsic value, needn't be catastrophic. So here's the writer's idea of a soft default. Basically devalue the currency excessively to the point where they can then have cheaper dollars to pay back all the trillions upon trillions of dollars that is owed to our creditors. Not really mentioning much about the people who actually save dollars the most in this country in particular, the middle class, and everyone else that gets up and work hard to earn a dollar. So here's how a soft default would work. It says the Treasury will peg the dollar to gold, oil, natural gas, or silver, or perhaps a basket of those commodities. So here we have the Treasury pegging the dollar to something tangible. And so once again, the idea of pegging something, I wouldn't be too confident in our current leadership being such a thing at this current point, and especially when we talk about gold. I'm not sure about this one because most people are still questioning whether or not we even have gold still. It says by choosing a weak valuation, for instance, 10,000 per ounce gold compared to the price of roughly 1,300 or so, much of the debt could be paid down thanks to a much weaker dollar. So here the author is proposing a weaker dollar, which basically says that everyone who holds dollars will lose significant amount of purchasing power, while people who held precious metals such as gold and silver will be on the receiving end of that devaluation in terms of the nominal price of those metals. So definitely a good reason to probably get your weight up if you haven't already. To close this out here, it says America's looming debt crisis threatens not just our economic prosperity, but our national security. 70% of all federal spending goes to entitlement programs and interest payments, leaving just 30% for the military and other discretionary programs. This ratio will become even more lopsided due to demographic changes by 2030. For the first time ever, there will be more seniors in the United States than any time in our history, more than likely. So this is what's happening in the news. So we have here on Fox Business an opinion piece in which someone talks about the idea of openly defaulting on the national debt, but not really paying too much attention as to how it will impact you, the person that's holding Federal Reserve notes. But one thing that was notable in this article here is the idea that if they revalued gold in terms of that devaluation of the dollar, it's good to say those that are getting their weight up, those that are sitting a little bit heavier in precious metals will be on the receiving end of that. And so without even have to really go any further, when it comes to a debt default, it's inevitable because there's no way on God Green's earth this debt can be repaid. So there will come a day where there will be a default. And if you want to go even deeper, it's already been a default in the fact that the Federal Reserve note has been devalued substantially since the creation of the Federal Reserve System itself. And so if that's not a default, I'm not sure what is. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this matter. What's the chance of there being a hard default or a soft default, according to how the person described in this article here? I'm curious to find out. Other than that, look forward to bringing you more news. Enjoy your day.